So early on in the process, when we did start sending it around to people and getting notes, we had followed that old adage of like, get in late, get out early, but I think to a little bit of an almost limit, and we realized that we needed to pull in some of those backstory elements to the dialogue or like create a little bit more context, because although Bianca and I had a really rich understanding of these women, we were like, oh, we've lived with them so long, so we're taking certain things for granted. We need to pull more back in.
And just one more thing, I also think it's important to note that later on in the process, we did get a lot of notes from different sources, our producers, our directors, what have you. The grant, the people that were in charge of the grant, and we really stayed true to the story and to the characters that we had lived with for the past year. We pushed back. So there were a lot of times where we were given notes that were pure story notes that we didn't agree with. And then we had a full-blown backstory to back why we did not agree with that and why we would not make that alteration. And I think that really benefited us in the end. Once we sent our script out for notes, our first draft for notes, we had these directors come to us and say, please don't give this to anybody else, we want this. And then they went back to their home base, which was New York City. They met with a group of women that eventually became our producers, and those producers applied for this grant. So it all happened very quickly. We found out very quickly afterwards that we were in the top 3. We then did some edits to our script to sort of add some elements that they felt were missing that we actually agreed that were missing, and from there we got the grant and went forward with it. It was actually a very seamless process from our perspective.
Which is rare. I mean, that's like super rare. But Shift is such an incredible company because they were really coming at it. You could tell from a genuine place of excitement and really wanting to support creators. And they were so excited. So they were with us on set. You know, they gave us money for it, but they also, we shot in the desert, in the hot desert in June. It was like 107 degrees. And Shift had a media trailer, like a big Airstream. And they came out. They were also shooting BTS, which was really interesting, and it was cool because they interviewed us too, like on camera before we shot, and I think a lot of times we're checking in with us saying, why did you make this story, and like what is it really about? And because we had people constantly asking us that, I feel like that also benefited the end result largely. You know, when Bianca and I went to acting school together, we went to NYU, and our teachers said quite often at that time, make your own work. And I remember thinking, I think you probably did too, I don't want to do that right now because I'm spending all this money and time just trying to learn how to act and to be really good at that. But I think coming out of school and hitting the real world and seeing so many multi-hyphenates now, if you can do other things, do it. Because even if you don't stick with it, just trying to write a script as an actor, right? Or as a writer, just taking an acting class, oh my God, like that's going to inform you tenfold. And or an editing class, you know, like as an actor, knowing that you can give all these takes, but at the end of the day, it's the editor who's going to be selecting and crafting your performance again.
Our job as actors is to best serve the story, right, in whatever way possible. So we are solely vessels for this story to be told, and to approach it from that perspective, we were able to sort of craft it from the outside and inside. And again, as Diana previously mentioned, we initially approached screenwriting because we had never really done it before, let alone as a duo. And so we approached it from an acting standpoint and used improv and all different techniques to sort of help us figure out the story and serve it properly.
Also watched a lot of shorts and read a lot of books about screenwriting, and like talked to a lot of screenwriter friends, because I think we do really respect our screenwriter friends and that craft, and didn't want to just come in swinging thinking like, oh yeah, we can do this, it's so easy. Like we knew that it was going to be its own mountain to climb, and had real respect for that as well. Yeah. We're handing out cards at the festival. We definitely do have a feature in mind, and I think because Bianca and I had done so much work with the backstory, the short, in effect, can and probably will function as like the top of our second act of our feature, for example. We've outlined and have begun writing a feature version. So we're very much thinking about that and have been for quite a while. So it's cool to hear other people be like, have you thought about turning this into a movie? Because we're like 100% yes.
Yeah. We created a full story in order to create this short. And so and without the intention of necessarily turning it into a feature. But having done that has now led to people wanting to see more, which is ultimately what you want from a short. You want it to feel complete, but you want to leave people wanting more. And so it's had a wonderful response and effect, and has made us very excited to go back to our humble abodes and just keep pounding the pavement with the outline that we've created.
I mean, and some shorts aren't meant to be features, right? It's like but to use the example of like Helion, that short that was then turned into a feature, where it's like the short isn't totally the feature. They are different, but they are in the same world. We also realized when we were like crafting the feature idea that it doesn't have to be exactly, maybe we don't want to carry over to the feature. There's subplots to add in. There's like a lot more that happens.
Yeah, the idea was to continue telling and to expand on these two women, not necessarily to expand on that particular circumstance. In the short, the environment is one of the protagonists, right? It's Cora and Maddie, and then the environment. And what was important in a feature length is that we're staying with them and serving their personal stories. The heat was very intense, and our crew went into heavy preparation for it and made sure that they had the appropriate garb and attire, and we had a medic on set just to make sure that everybody was safe. We had air conditioned. We had the Shift media truck, which was amazing, an amazing resource. We also had another trailer that was fully air conditioned just to make sure everybody was safe. However, Diana and I were in these very authentic costumes. We had knee-high, thigh-high socks and petticoats and undershirts and dresses and aprons and handkerchiefs and bonnets, but they're all made out of cotton, which is so breathable and so wonderful. These women knew what they were doing. So we were actually, we were pretty great, while everybody else was, putting ice packs down their pants. So.
Yeah. Well, we also had a 2-day shoot, which is really ambitious. So that was a huge challenge. And we were doing all natural light and outside, and there was wind. So sound was, we'd have to hold for wind a lot. We have a live animal in it. We have gunfire. There were a lot of things that were very run and gun, sort of like one take. And especially the end of the second day as the sun was setting, we were doing one and dones, which is hard, but you have to say, like, thank God we already knew these characters so well and had been living with it so long that we could just improvise if need be, and like that was a huge part of it too.
And Diana loves to tell this story, so maybe I'll leave it up to her. But speaking of the live animal, we did have a moment while the sun was setting, and we only had one take and 3 scenes to do, each that were only permitting us one take as the light was going, where our horse ran away.
Well, that was my fault. I lost the horse. To be fair.
Our horse essentially ran away, was scared of the wind was very strong. The horse ran away, and the horse wrangler essentially, as the sun was setting, came back over the mountain riding the horse. It was the most epic wrap shot, martini shot you could ever have.
They were really nervous though because Shift was there, and they were just worried about insurance. So when that horse went running and I was left with like the reins slipped out of my hand, I was like, oh, this is the end. Like, this is the end for all of us. We will never get money from Shift again, but they were troopers. They're amazing. They're a duo, a directing duo, which is really fun because Bianca and I were a duo. So the way that they work is really interesting because Charlotte Fassler and Danny Girdwood, and they've been making a lot of commercials, but this was, I believe, their first narrative. So what was cool was that one of them would focus between takes on the more technical aspects and sort of like talk to the DP and handle all of that business. And then usually the other one would then come up to Bianca and I and have notes. So like more emotional, like fine tuning, crafting notes, and they change those hats frequently. So it was really cool to be with them. They also, as a duo, sort of starting out, know what it's like to make something to showcase your abilities. So they were always extremely supportive of, we're doing this because we love it and we really believe in this story about two women fighting for something they believe in, but also we love you, Diana and Bianca, and we want to help support you guys as writers and actors, because that was the initial reason to do the whole darn thing.
Yeah, they came out of those 5 people that we each sent to get notes on the script. So I had sent it to a good friend of mine who knew Charlotte and Danny. She had sent it along to Charlotte and Danny. The next time that they were in Los Angeles, they met with us and they said, "We love this script. Please do not give it to anybody else. We would like it." And we had initially thought that it was going to be the 4 of us in some desert. Both of them were going to take turns, operating camera, and we were just going to do it. But then luckily we found these producers and Shift came along and really, really saved the day.
Well, it's an amazing festival, and so it was already on our radar, just in our top, I don't know, 10 to 20 festivals and reaches. Also, this being a Western, a revisionist Western, we definitely thought there could be an audience here for this kind of story. They'd be interested in it. And we each had a couple friends who specifically, when they saw it, said, "Have you thought about Austin?" Because they've either had shorts play here or they've been, and they thought it might be a good fit. So much so that when I went back in my emails when we got into Austin and was, telling everyone, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this person told us to or mentioned it," and so we were very sure to thank them for putting it on our radar. So fun. It's been really busy. I mean, I'm always really touched and surprised. I shouldn't be, but I'm surprised when people come out to a film festival and see short film blocks. People who aren't, tied to the films or in the business, just like, the general beautiful Austin public. And those are always like the most touching interactions, because you meet, I don't know, for this short in particular, an older woman who loves Westerns and watches them with her husband, but hasn't maybe seen something that she feels is badass and female. And you can tell that really resonates. And our fellow filmmakers have been incredible.
Yeah. And for the lack of sounding too cliche, it's been utterly inspirational. We've seen great films. We've talked to incredible people. We've watched people speak on panels. The takeaways from those panels are something that I will repeat for the rest of my life. And it's been an incredible, incredible festival. We talked to someone yesterday who made sure that we knew that not all festivals are quite like this. Yeah. And so we are exceptionally grateful for this experience and the fact that we were able to be here and we have gotten an insurmountable amount of support. There's a lot that resonates. I don't know. I mean, of course, it's a constant learning process, but there are certain things that have been repeated that feel obvious, and yet when you hear them again, they hit you so hard that it's a major takeaway that you then begin to apply to your life, even though it is something you already knew. So that's been exceptionally impactful for me. So I went to a showrunner panel yesterday. And there was a question from the audience, and this woman asked, in the face of adversity, how do you keep going? How do you keep going when you get a lot of rejection and you say no? And this showrunner, who's the showrunner of Pose, said, "I am the shadow of my parents' sacrifice, and I do not have the right to give up." That personally, to me, was exceptionally impactful. I feel that way a lot. And that reminder and hearing that I was not alone in that feeling just amplifies my drive and motivation. Yeah.
I also think people talk about networking a lot, and film festivals are a great place to network, and you do go because you want to, but that word can have a dirty connotation. And someone yesterday said that it's not really about, this business is built on community and friendships, and those relationships are always, the best ones are based on just like loving someone and supporting them and wanting to help, and never from like I'm doing this because I hope you do something for me point of view, which we know, but it's really lovely to hear that reaffirmed from someone who's writing Marvel movies, that all of their jobs still in a way come out of like genuine friendships and community in unexpected ways all the time, and never because they were like, oh, I should have lunch with this person because I feel like maybe they could help me. And that's always great to hear. In writing and making films and continuing to do that, I am reminded that you live with a story and a film longer than you might think when initially conceiving of an idea. And the most important thing is that you feel extremely passionate about that story, and that it is something you could geek out on for days and months and years. Because that is the engine that you need to keep going when people say, I'm not a fan of this, or no, you're not getting into this festival, and to push through. And that when you meet other people who also have a passion for that similar story, it's like such an incredible experience.
This is something that a friend of Diana's that I met at this festival said to me that he had heard from a panel. And this is something that I'm taking away, which is Lindsay Doran said that when a spider makes a web, the spider makes the web for the joy of making the web. She had seen a spider who had made a web, and it had reached all the way across her swimming pool. And she thought to herself, how did it get all the way across her swimming pool? But the spider just made the web for the joy of making the web, and it's the wind that took it across the swimming pool. So, that goes for writing and filmmaking and just being in this industry. If you are doing something you are passionate about, like Diana said, and you are doing it for the joy of the story or for the joy of doing it, life will take it in the direction that it's supposed to go.